Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we're going to do an updated deck list for the Kaido leader that we get from the super pre-releases at the end of the month. We are actually very close to getting our own North American cards, which I'm really excited for. But this is going to be an updated list for the Romance Dawn set. There's also the Film Star deck, which I'm not sure exactly when that's releasing for North America, but it's also just a purple list, and there's honestly just a bunch of good cards that help this leader even more. But we're just going to do a Romance Dawn version of it. So just going into this leader, he's just kind of like the best purple, just generic one, because spoilers, the king one is not very great. He's pretty bad. So just having a leader like this that can, is a 5 life for purple, since purple is such a control kind of like list and ramp, you kind of need some time to set up, but just having a leader like this is good. It has active main, Dawn -7, trash the top card of your opponent's life, which is just nice. It's really kind of lets you have like an end game position, or like a way for your leader to kind of chip damage at the end of the game, which is nice. As I say, the only thing that I don't like about it is that you can never win by using this activate main. So you normally have to use the activate main, use -7, go down to 3 Dawn, and then you have to use those 3 Dawns to somehow get something that's big enough to get your opponent to take that last damage part of the time. But I do like it, and like even if their leader does nothing, I think just having a purple leader at 5, like I said earlier, is really strong, and we're going to go from there. So going through the list itself, first we're just going to start with Onigashima. This is like the best and worst card in the deck. If you see this on turn 2 and you play it, you probably have a good chance at winning. And if you see it any other time, you're probably losing the game. So I don't know how I feel about that. It just feels really bad, especially in a game that there's not a lot of card draw and cycle. This card is, sometimes I just almost don't want to run it, because I feel like if I don't see it on turn 2, it's just a worthless card. I never have time to play it. So it is super nice that you are able to just get 1 free Dawn every turn, which does mean like your Dawn -1 effects aren't as costly to do so. And it's just kind of we aren't doing like a bunch of good stuff for 3 Dawn on turn 2, or even 4 Dawn on turn 2 most of the time anyway. So just being able to have this out, I think, is good. But otherwise, it's just kind of dead in hand. And the big kind of weakness for purple is that there are so many good effects that it has, but most of the cards are just stuck in your hand. They're either really expensive and you have a hard time getting them out, or they don't have any counter costs, so you just can't pitch them to help you on the defense side either. But I love this card when I see it turn 2, and I hate it any other time in the game, especially like when you take it from your life expecting to get something that you can do something with. It's just dead. It's just such a dead card once you have one out, and that's a big shame. Going to our 2 drops, we just have a bunch of blockers for these guys. I don't think this is wrong, especially since these are blockers that are 1k as well, for the counter step. So this is a 2k block we get from the set. We get a 3k blocker from this from the set too. So this is from the star deck, sorry, and this is from the actual set. But really weird to see the power creep. Obviously the traits mean something different, but those are our 2 drops there. And then going into our 3 drops, I am running the Jack from the star deck, and I think this is a bit of a decision point on my side. I just think he's good. I think he's neat, honestly. It's just counter +1, and then for on play, you can discard 1 card from your hand, reveal 1 Dawn from your deck in active, which is kind of nice that it is active. And again, like, we have so many cards in our hand that are just dead later in the game that sometimes you just play the Jack, and then you get the extra Dawn, and you just discard a card that has no business being in your hand in the first place. You get some value from that too. And again, worst case, you just counter it +1, discard it. I think he's like a good backup for when you don't see Onigashima, and I do kind of like that for him. So especially like he's a 3 cost, which means that let's say you have 10 Dawn and you use your leader -7 effect, then you can use Jack to go, you play it, discard a card, go up to 4 Dawn, and then you can have like an Onigashima go up to 5, which means that next turn you can do the -7 again if you need to and be so aggressive. I don't know if you want to do that, but that's just an option. And he's really slated really good for being a 3 cost to play after you just use your Dawn -7. I do think that is kind of nice for him as well. We're also playing 2 Who's Who's. This could be a little bit more. He's just a neat card. I thought when I first saw this, when I saw and started playing the game, that he was broken, and I think he's just fine. Being able to pop something for Dawn -1 on a battle card, or sorry, a character card, I think is good enough, and you do get to trigger it from your security if you play it. So I think that's fine. Again, it's just like not having a counter cost is really expensive in a deck like this, where you have very little counter cost. going through our 4s and pretty much just the super counters here. So we're running 4 of the ulti from the star deck, and then 4 of the X Drake from the set. Both are just 2k counters. We're not playing any page 1, so this ulti really doesn't do anything for us. The X Drake just says on play Dawn -1, your opponent trashes 1 card from your hand. So sometimes, like late game, when your opponent doesn't have a lot of cards in hand, this could actually be kind of impactful. And especially if you're doing like math, they're trying to get to -7 to make it so they aren't doing anything. If they have like 1 or 2 cards in hand, you can do, play this for 5, and then you put 2 Dawn under something else, do the -7, and then they have 1 less card to kind of combo out your stuff. So I think X Drake obviously a little bit more flexible in a card, but both of them are 2k counters, and I do like that for this. You need as many as possible for a deck that's supposed to be kind of control heavy and very defensive. Next, probably one of my favorite purple cards in the entire game. It is the Queen. It's a 5-drop for 6k blocker, and then on play Dawn -1, get to draw 2 cards and trash 1. This just fixes your hands. Like, you just want to see this every time. The Dawn -1 means very little to you, and it's a blocker too. It's like all of this is very good. This is like the best card for the entire leader. Like, it just fixes a lot of problems with it, and it's the only problem with it is you can only run 4. If there were more cards that kind of did like this, even as like a larger or like a smaller version of Queen, I think you'd be in a good spot. We also do have the Queen from the set, so it is a 6-drop 5k. On play Dawn -1, you get to give it Rush, and then give one of your opponent's characters -2k power during this turn. Sometimes it's just like good to have something that has Rush to get 1 more swing when your opponent's not expecting you. It is also counter +1k, so it's never super dead in hand, and it's kind of like good. Like if you're playing in something like if they're playing the Usis Kid and you want to like get rid of it, you can use this to continually get some swings on it and like make it really important for your opponent to like counter with it or stuff. It's fine. I'm running it at 3. I like the other Queen a little bit more, but it is a strong card. And then also, this is going to be a inspiration just from the Kaido list that got first at the big tournament in Japan that I did coverage on too, so make sure to check that out if you haven't already. You were able to use promo cards and film cards, but for this one, he did run this guy. It's just a big 6-drop vanilla for 8k. And honestly, like as like just basic as this card is, sometimes your opponent's just going to have a hard time removing this. And just having an 8k body to swing in, or potentially 11k if you're at 10 Dawn, you do your Dawn -1 and you put the last 3 Dawn underneath guy. Like this guy, sometimes it's just enough to win the game. So I also would consider like the 7-drop for 9k. That's just like only loses to blue, which is nice. This guy also kind of loses to blue, but 7 cost characters are inherently very hard to get rid of besides battle in this game. I think that is kind of worth looking into, especially for something that is large and still has the counter cost in hand. I think that's kind of worth it. And then next we do have the Kings. We have 2 from the star deck. These just say active on play Dawn -1. You get to KO one of your opponent's cards with 4k or less, and just having like a 7k body out to try to finish the game or do damage later. We also do have the King from the set, so it is a 7-drop for 7k. On play Dawn -2. Let me read this because I'm not as familiar with this guy. KO one of your opponent's characters with 3 costs or less, and one of your opponent's characters with 2 costs or less. So it is really expensive to get this guy out, but it can pop 2 things, which is kind of nice, especially against some of these more like aggro decks that we're seeing from red and green. Especially like if like you're playing against something like the Trafalgar Law and they have just a bunch of blockers out. This can KO 2 of them, which is nice. I do like the 2-1 split here, but sometimes these gain value. Sometimes they're just like not good enough, I feel like, and they're dead in hand, and then you just feel bad about it. But when they go off and your opponent doesn't play around them, they feel really good. We do have our Kaidos as well, so we do have the star deck Kaido. So 10k 9-drop Dawn -5. You're able to give this rush and pop something with 6 cost or less. And then we do have like the biggest boy Kaido. Just for 10 Dawn -6, you're able to KO everything on the board beside itself. And then it's a big old 12k that you're able to just swing 1 damage return for pretty much the rest of the game. So anything that's not like red, where they have just rush and they don't care about their board state, this King can do a lot, especially if you're playing in something that has like some like in like the counter control matchup. This can do a lot of damage to KO everything, and then just continual 12k swings is great. So I like this guy at 2. But sometimes both these guys like are just sometimes stuck in your hand for the entire game, and I really hate to see that. That's like the most unfortunate thing about these guys. But when they go off, your opponent feels really bad, and I do appreciate feeling that. And then lastly, we're just going to go into our event cards. We're keeping it basic for this one. So for Blast Breath, being able to get a plus 4k for 1 Dawn is just super good for this guy. Being able to get that defensive thing, and especially in a deck where we don't have a lot of card advantage, 4k counter on 1 card is strong for us. So I think it's a great pick there. And then lastly, we do have the Ultimate Mortar. So for 1 counter Dawn -2, your leader gets plus 2k, and then if you have and then just during this battle, then you get to draw a card. So cycle in this deck is good. It does come at the cost of Dawn -2, but I think it's good. And then also has the trigger, add 1 Dawn to the ramp. So this is, I think, a basic list, but I think a strong list for Kaido for people going into the Romance Dawn and wanting to upgrade their starter decks that they're getting. So I do like the list, but that's going to be it for me. Let me know what you guys think of this leader and this deck, as well as what deck you want to see from Romance Dawn covered next. So again, that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it. Damn it.